very first session yesterday and noticed that there are some universals where I saw that this beautiful gathering was honoring the ancestors by letting the front row totally open. All the seats were not taken, so I thought this is a very respectful audience. The title of my talk is Beyond Gentle Giants and Suffering Citizens, Crafting the Courage to Write a New Nation by Writing the Land. I've been known to invent interesting titles, and I hope the title has something to do with the content. On October 12th of this year, on International Day of Solidarity with Indigenous People, I saw my second leafy cardinal. It was outside of my window, perched in the barren sapodilla tree. For those who might not know, a leafy cardinal might come to you when you decide one day to fall asleep on the couch and proceed to roll onto your glasses, shatter them, so you have to be in a world with so-called diminished sight. Additionally, once you have this special sight, you need to be caught totally off guard, such as would happen when waking up in the morning and thinking about an essay you need to finish. When you look outside expecting to see only a green-leafed tree, then you are surprised by the visiting leafy cardinal. Its body is completely made out of select, well-positioned brown leaves in between the green leaves, combined with special sight. That day, the cardinal taught me about changed vision, magic, shifting realities. This is just one from an exhaustingly long list of teachers I have been privileged to have in my life, and who have come in waking states, others in dreams or dreamlike states. And among these were the gruff conquistador Don Juan de la Cosa Pizarro Montalban, the Congolese spirit Rufina Lembanyenge Tatampola, Selina Didao, an ancestor that I've not yet found in our family stories, Epilepsy, who was and still is one of my greatest teachers, and the Gentle Giant. Some would imagine the Gentle Giant to be some Disney-like creature or a happy-go-lucky green man of tan. But far from that, he was a guardian who appeared at night when I would be coming home from parties as a teenager. A guardian who stood at the edge of the property we lived on and watched me gently. A guardian who stood at the edge of the property and taught. Through my mother's wisdom, he taught me about terrifying benevolence. Registering my fear of this huge being when I told my mother about him after meeting him for the first time, she calmly asked me about his demeanor. And noticing my answer, she told me that it seemed that what I might need most was to trust the protection that I was being given. Although my mother never explained what that meant, I immediately knew deeply, uncontrollably, illogically, that the land was alive and that there was infinite goodness to be found in this land. Later, I understood that I had to keep my deep connection with and a responsibility toward the land, any land, anywhere. That teaching never left me. I also learned that when you do not expect it, or have learned to deny it, benevolence can be terrifying in the way it shows up, even when you see it clearly for what it is. But just being aware of terrifying benevolence, or of the magic of diminished sight, is not enough. There might exist a commitment to place that is bigger than these, that is the context of magic and benevolence. It might just be, for example, that magical realism was possible for Juan Rulfo, Gabriel Garcia Marquez, and Alejo Carpentier, and millions before them, only because of responsibility to the land and to those who lived on the land. From the living, breathing jungle to the two-leggeds who might live within this jungle or destroy the jungle. And when we can only observe through shattered lenses or blurred frames, we might be called to do just this, to rely on a commitment to the land. But then one's perspective changes drastically. One sees that which is not being spoken, that which is spoken of too lightly, too painfully, or too wisely, becomes your focus. Like the new nation of Curacao, since 10-10-10, October 10 of 2010, Curacao is a new country, a young nation, an exotic oxymoron called autonomous country within the kingdom. Before that, it went through many forms and constellations, leading back to the first mention we find in the history books, Isla de los Gigantes, Island of Giants. Our current nation is built on that past and on other pasts, some much older, ancient, pasts that have been constructed and silenced in so many ways that most of you today know very little about. Michel Rolf-Trouillot has shown the importance of constructing our pasts in a meticulous and loving way to find the narratives that produce silenced subjects and those that reconstruct their voices. Trouillot's approach to history, however, should not be seen separately from the project of constructing an anthropology of the present, embedded in an understanding and questioning of the global realities and attention to local practice. History is important because it is one of the many ways in which we construct our present. Listening to current narratives of our social reality is sometimes heartbreaking. A lot of it speaks of suffering, the increasing social and domestic violence, further marginalization of the disenfranchised, lack of leadership, stories that have a familiar ring in the region and that have been with us in Curacao for a long time. But they're picking up speed and becoming more urgent. They're also giving voice to subjects who have been neglected for a long time. And like has happened elsewhere, they're juxtaposed to narratives of progress that try to convince us that all is well. For example, in the more well-known novel of Frank Martinez, Double Play, the Mondi, the bush, is a symbol of liberty, erotic love, and new beginnings. A place where Yanchi lives among the Palo de Leche, and a place where the Mondi becomes a way of sustenance. The Palo de Leche is an invasive species that spread on the island as a result of an unsuccessful economic venture. On the other hand, the wabi, the acacia, will become, in this perspective in Frank Martinez's work, a way to open the future by having cooperatives work together and create a new economy based on friendship and dialogue. Many other authors have looked at nature. But Juliana spends a lot of time on nature, as for example in the haikus we've heard about today. In most of his work, he goes into the psyche of the Curaçaoan, and then he has other parts of his work ask how this psyche can recognize nature and be with nature. In the first set of works, he documents, among other things, the double consciousness created by slavery and colonialism, and criticizes the deformed personalities and relationships born under these circumstances. He does this in the same way that, for example, the W.E.B. Du Bois, Frantz Fanon, and others have talked about this in more analytical terms. I think that if he had been interested in creating a theoretical framework, which he never was, he would probably be more comfortable, though, with Sylvia Wynter's analysis, in which he looks both at a logical kind of double consciousness, where there's a Eurocentric normativity and an Afro-peripheric as well as other peripheric imitations of these norms, as well as on the other hand, a double consciousness where the Eurocentric normativity is juxtaposed to, in a critical way, to lived reality. The way that Juliana most strongly develops this last aspect of double consciousness, this more positive and critical double consciousness, is in his own authorial voice, not so much in the context or in the content of his work. He seems interested, however, in some of his less emblematic poems in exploring how the land defines identity. For example, in Fiamu Piki, he sees the land as a mysterious connector beyond history. Fiamu Piki pa mi cuoco corazón de bacia baraka aquí. Mi que descubrir algo misterioso, una leo mi bai, da queda bati fuerte del baúl de mi sentir. Di un de gracia, rico pobre, de tu credo, de tu raza, topando ribacaia, da crita hare umidad, a otro de brasa. Pensei, mi que un piki pa mi cuoco, te de corazón de isla aquí, pa mi adorar el ardo misterioso, una leo mi bai, da que te resona, de baúl de mi sentir. Please lend me a pickaxe, so I can dig the heart of this rock. I want to find a mysterious vein that, however far I go, keeps throbbing hard in the trunk of my mind. From whence the grace that rich or poor, of all creeds, all races, meeting in the streets, laugh loudly, greeting, pull each other into their arms. That's why I want a pickaxe, so I can dig the heart of this rock. So I can worship the mysterious vein that, however far I go, keeps throbbing in the trunk of my mind. In a more mystical mood, he explores in another poem something else. As he says, on celestial bodies of the universe, on clouds that float by in the sky, on the foam of waves that roll on top of the highest mountain, on the greatest rock, in the thickest jungle, in the deepest cave, in the most fathomless sea, in the blowing wind, in the dark of the night, in the bright of the day, human minds and animal instincts, everywhere its name is signed. The big and the small, strong or weak, wise or ignorant, beautiful or ugly, all like it, all love it, all adore it, and all who lose it bitterly cry for it. And how often does it not occur that they struggle and fight until they even suffer loss for it, because it's the treasure that's most expensive, the greatest, most beautiful on this world. Its name is freedom. He refuses to summarize. He needs to name all that which is bathed by freedom. This departs somewhat from his essays and even from his more well-known poems that give either a critical look at society and relations, or else praise specific aspects that need to be praised in human and non-human life. Here, everything gets its place, beside each other and inside freedom. Freedom is stripped of its usually human-centric content, and even an entity like a cave that will commonly be put at the furthest end of the sentient spectrum longs for and fights for freedom. This is a radical notion of presence, that all beings, as long as they exist, are defined by freedom.